Before wrestling games got realistic, they got ridiculous. WWF WrestleMania The Arcade Game threw realism out the window in favor of pure unfiltered chaos. With its cartoonish special moves and fast-paced action, it was part fighting game, part wrestling spectacle. But was this over-the-top slugfest actually a smart play for arcades, or just a flashy gimmick in a crowded ring? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to another episode of Arcade Economy. Today we're going to be diving into WWF WrestleMania The Arcade Game to figure out just how much it would have cost to beat this game when it came out in 1995. And we're going to be determining just how predatory the gameplay really was. In my last episode, we took a look at the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game, a fan favorite that got bumped to the front of the line thanks to your overwhelming requests. But now, as promised, it's time to tag in WWF WrestleMania The Arcade Game. This one's not your typical wrestling game. It's loud, it's chaotic, and it's packed with uppercuts that send you flying in combos that look like they were ripped straight from Mortal Kombat. We'll be diving into the game's development, its unique style, and of course, just how much it drained wallets in the arcade. Did this game fight fair, or was it a steel chair to your allowance? Let's find out. WWF WrestleMania The Arcade Game holds a special place in my heart. It was the game that got me interested in wrestling in the mid-90s. After playing the PlayStation port at a friend's house during a sleepover, I became a wrestling fan overnight, just before the Attitude Era took shape too. But WWE, or WWF as it was called back then, was no stranger to video games. This was the 16th licensed WWF title to be released, and the third to be released in arcades. In the late 80s, Technos Japan, the game developer behind the hit arcade Double Dragon, sought out the rights to the WWF for a new wrestling game they were creating. Technos had already developed two wrestling arcade games prior, 1983's Tag Team Wrestling and 1985's Mat Mania. Using the Double Dragon 2 engine, Technos released WWF Superstars in 1989. A huge leg up from other wrestling games at the time, especially the first couple WWF licensed games. The game was a big success and one of the top grossing arcades of the time. In 1991, Technos released a sequel to Superstars with WrestleFest. WrestleFest came equipped with enhanced graphics and sound, a larger roster, and more moves and game modes. This went on to be an even bigger hit than Superstars. To this day, WrestleFest is still considered by some to be the best wrestling game of all time. Side note, don't worry, I will be taking a look at these two arcade games in the future as well. Actually, now that you mention it, it does seem a little weird to focus on the latter WWF arcade game and then work backwards, but I digress. Between 1989 and 1994, Acclaim published a total of 10 WWF games for home console and handheld, bringing WWF to systems like the NES, Game Boy, SNES, and Sega Genesis Mega Drive, among others. Then, in 1995, Midway Games released one of the most unique and visually appealing wrestling games of the time, WrestleMania The Arcade Game. The project got started in 1994 with game developer Mark Turmell taking the lead. Turmell was head of Midway's sports division and had already produced a huge hit with 1993's NBA Jam. Turmell decided to turn towards professional wrestling and seek out the WWF license. The Midway team took the same approach to digitize the fighters for WrestleMania The Arcade Game the same way they did with the Mortal Kombat games, using a green screen, or blue screen, technology to record the wrestlers' movements and key out the backgrounds. Says The Undertaker. Mark Turmell stated that, "I worked 16 hours a day, 7 days a week for 6 months to get WWF WrestleMania out. People play the game all day in my office and give me feedback, plus artists are always coming in with new ideas for me and my partner, Sal DeVita." The wrestlers shot their moves on blue screen over the course of just 2 days. Mr. Perfect and the Steiner brothers were supposed to be part of the roster as well, but Mr. Perfect apparently no-showed for his scheduled shoot day, and the Steiners wound up signing with rival WCW. Adam Bomb was also supposed to be in the game as a secret character and has some hidden files within the game, but for whatever reason, he was left out. The game released in arcades in 1995, and later that year was ported to current and last-gen consoles of the time, thanks to our good friends at Acclaim. As expected, the current-gen consoles of the time, PlayStation and Sega Saturn, were near arcade-perfect ports, while consoles like Super NES and Genesis were scaled back due to limitations. A sequel to WrestleMania The Arcade Game, WWF In Your House, stepped into the ring a year later. Skipping the arcades entirely, this sequel went straight to consoles, hitting PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and MS-DOS. Developed by Acclaim, it cranked up the cartoonish chaos from its predecessor, but just didn't land the way the fans had hoped. After that misstep, WWF only dropped one more arcade title, 2000's Royal Rumble, before the franchise started experimenting with different game styles, and eventually settling into powerhouse franchises like SmackDown and then later WWE 2K. WWF WrestleMania The Arcade Game is pretty unique in its gameplay. There's not many games that I can compare it to. Sure, it's a wrestling game, kind of, but it's also a fighting game. It's not a 2D fighter because you can move up and down, but it's not a 3D fighter in the traditional sense because you're not moving up and down on an axis. Mortal Kombat wrestling game is probably the best way to describe WrestleMania The Arcade Game, I guess. After inserting your coins and pressing start, you're greeted by the voice of legendary ring announcer Howard Finkel as you navigate the player select screen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Howard Finkel, and welcome to WrestleMania by Midway.
The game lets you pick from 8 different wrestlers, including Doink the Clown, Razor Ramon, The Undertaker, Yokozuna, Shawn Michaels, Bam Bam Bigelow, Bret the Hitman Hart, and Lex Luger. I don't know where I'm going to put this in the video, but I just wanted to show off my Bret Hart shirt because it's awesome, and Bret Hart is the best wrestler of all time. Each character has their own unique moveset and plays differently, with some characters being quicker or more powerful than others. Despite its realistic graphics, the game gets very cartoonish, with characters being able to morph their arms and legs into different objects. Some characters are fitted with special moves that aren't wrestling moves at all, but fit their gimmick. The Undertaker can slam tombstones and throw ghosts into his opponent, Lex Luger's arms turn into steel, Razor Ramon's arms turn into literal razors, and Doink the Clown uses carnival hammers and electric buzzers. In true Mortal Kombat fashion, Midway even included a fatality in the game, which can be performed by The Undertaker. Rumor has it that every character was supposed to receive a fatality for the game, but Mark Turmell needed to wrap up the game in order to focus on Midway's next big sports title, NFL Blitz, so he wound up leaving them out. Something I always thought was entertaining was how the characters would bleed objects that fit within their gimmick. Bats fall out of The Undertaker, literal hearts fall out of Bret Hart, and ham would fall out of Yokozuna. You know, because he's fat, and fat people love ham. The gameplay is extremely fast-paced with a pretty steep learning curve. Aside from normal punches, kicks, and blocks, you can also perform runs and grabs that set up other special moves and combos. It's not very intuitive, and if you don't know how to perform a grab, you might completely miss these extra moves, putting you at a major disadvantage. Typical signature and finishing moves are also featured in the game for each character. Grabs can be countered or blocked by entering specific combinations faster than your opponent. Once I figured this out, it was a major turning point in my matches. Each character also has a combo meter that, when filled, can be used to execute longer, more powerful combos, or saved to kick out of a pinfall. Like some other wrestling games, you can climb the turnbuckles for high-flying attacks, and fight outside the ring. The gameplay for this game can be a little intimidating at first, especially with its steep learning curve, but once you get the hang of it, it becomes a blast, and you can just have so much fun with this game. WWF WrestleMania The Arcade Game also has some of the best sound and audio featured in an arcade. As far as I know, this is the first wrestling game to feature play-by-play commentary. Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler are at ringside calling each match just as they would during the time this game released.
Who will be the victor?
And after a victor is declared, a loop of their entrance music will play. Aside from player versus player and co-op mode, there are 2 single-player modes that can be chosen: Intercontinental Belt and WWF Championship Belt. Choosing either of these will start a 7-match ladder. If the Intercontinental Belt is chosen, your ladder will consist of 4 1-on-1 matches, 2 2-on-1 matches, and 1 3-on-1 match. After winning the 3-on-1 match, you'll be treated to a congratulations screen with a message saying it's time to seek a bigger challenge, and inviting you to compete for the World Championship. When competing for the WWF Championship belt, your ladder consists of 4 2-on-1 matches, 2 3-on-1 matches, and 1 insane 8-on-1 match where you will have to defeat every wrestler in the game. Since the game can only handle 4 wrestlers in the ring at one time, wrestlers will exit the ring once their health is depleted, as new wrestlers run in. It's fast and fun, but at times stressful and frustrating. And I will say, once I did complete the game, I felt extremely accomplished. Now, while this game doesn't feature a story, there are endings for each character if you complete the WWF Championship belt with them. And let me tell you, these endings are either extremely chaotic or very dated in their humor, or both. They are text-based, so they don't have any images or cutscenes to go along with them. The most ridiculous one is probably Razor Ramon's. He wins the gold, goes back to his home country of Cuba to show the good people there what you can achieve with hard work in America. He becomes a motivational speaker, only to then be jumped by 4 thugs who steal his belt and all of his gold chains, causing Razor to fall into a deep alcohol-fueled depression. He then begins sleeping on park benches and train stations, but rumor has it he was able to pick himself up and then opens a pawn shop somewhere in Chile. Other endings are just as insane. Doink the Clown celebrates with circus elephants who get scared by fireworks and trample a portion of the audience. Bam Bam Bigelow uses his fire abilities to incinerate the entire arena. Yokozuna causes the collapse of the American government. And Shawn Michaels' love for attention in women causes him to leave his life as a wrestler to pursue a career in politics where he could get his fair share of both. Okay, maybe that last one's not that far-fetched. Now, it's time for the main event. How much would you spend to beat WWF WrestleMania The Arcade Game back in 1995? Now, as always, I played this game on its default arcade settings, which means it was 50 cents for every play and set at medium difficulty. I set up a counter to increase 50 cents every time I pushed the insert coin button. This was the first time that I played this game probably since the 90s, so I knew no special moves or combos going in, and I went in completely blank. I started off playing for the Intercontinental Belt Ladder, and knowing how games like Mortal Kombat work, I just tried to guess some of the special moves. I also played around with different characters until I started to vibe with one. Eventually that became Shawn Michaels. I figured out some of his special moves through trial and error, and I was able to make my way all the way through the Intercontinental Belt Ladder. It took me about an hour to complete, and at the end, I wound up spending $10.50. Now, $10.50 back in 1995 in today's money would feel like spending $22.13 adjusted for inflation. And after this, I wanted to make a run for the WWF title, but I wasn't confident enough that I would be able to complete that ladder just based on me guessing the moves and knowing a handful of moves for Shawn Michaels. So I did look up some of the combos, some of the other special moves. I found out that you can counter, that you can grab and perform moves within the grab, and this helped me get through the WWF Championship ladder. Even with this knowledge, it still took me about an hour to complete, and it was still pretty challenging. I wound up spending $11.50 on the WWF Championship ladder. Had I gone into that blind, I don't even know if I would have completed it. I think I would have probably just played for hours until I eventually gave up. $11.50 back in 1995 is comparable to feeling like spending $24.24 in today's money. So if you combine these two together, I spent $22 to beat WrestleMania The Arcade Game. Adjusted for inflation, spending $22 in 1995 would feel like spending a whopping $46.37 today. So now, where does this game fall on my Predatory game scale of 1 to 5? I'm having a really hard time trying to place this game. Yes, I realize that up until this point in the series, this has been by far the most expensive game that I've played. However, every game that I've played prior to this has been a beat 'em up. And while you can take some skill in beat 'em ups to beat the game with less money, as long as you have a large enough bankroll, you can just pump quarters into beat 'em ups until you complete the game. Fighting games don't necessarily work like that. Fighting games make you get good. You have to figure out what strategies work and what don't in order to progress through the game. Yes, there is a steep learning curve, but once you become comfortable with the game, you get better and you'll wind up spending less money in future plays. And if I were someone who were completely unfamiliar with the way that fighting game mechanics worked, I may have never beat this game. Now, that being said, I can't just put this game at a 5 for having a steep learning curve. Sure, that may be a reason to add to why it's predatory. The main reason why this game is predatory is because of its 8-on-1 gauntlet at the end, which, while challenging, can still be beaten. But outside of this, the game doesn't really show any obvious signs of predatory game mechanics. There are some fighting game arcades out there that will read player input and automatically react to that to cancel your animation, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about that. That is a predatory game. I didn't notice anything like that in this game at all. So I think we have to think of the fighting game predatory game scale as something that's completely separate to the beat 'em up or run and gun predatory game scale. I apologize for my long-ass explanation there, but I think it was needed. So with that said, on my predatory game scale, I'm going to give WrestleMania The Arcade Game a 4 out of 5.
It's a total debacle!
I'm interested to see how this compares to other fighting games as I start to dive into them in the future. I may have to revisit this later and move it up or down. Hey, thanks again for watching. Next time on Arcade Economy, we're going to be taking a look at another fan favorite. You guys have been asking for this one. It's The Simpsons Arcade Game. Please let me know in the comments below what other games you would like to see me explore in the future. If you liked this video, it would mean a great deal to me if you could give it a big thumbs up. And please subscribe if you want to see more of Arcade Economy. Hopefully, I will see you on my future videos. Thank you for watching, and thank you for your support.
In a squared circle, Shawn Michaels versus